Oi, you know what time it is? You're tuned in listening to Dry That Aussie Metal Guy. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of his content when it drops. And remember, stay brutal, you mad dogs. Roof!
And g'day, how you all going? It's Jai, that Aussie metal guy here with crank.com. So tonight, wherever you are in the world, it's a great pleasure that I'm getting to have a chat with Derision Cult, the brainchild of multi-talented musician Dave McAnally, who has been a relentless and growing force in the industrial metal scene. With a career spanning over 10 years now, the band has consistently pushed the boundaries of the genre, blending hard-hitting metal riffs with scathing industrial beats. Their music is not just a sonic assault, but a commentary on the socio-political landscape, media overstimulation, and the human condition. From the early raw sounds to the more refined and diverse tracks of recent years, Derision Cult has evolved while staying true to their core message as they gear up for the release of their latest EP, Mercenary Notes Part 2, which does drop 14th of March 2025. Fans are eagerly anticipating another industrial dose of their unique sound and thought-provoking lyrics. There we go, Dave. Cheers for joining me, mate.
Man, you were right. That's a hell of an intro. Thanks, bud. Glad to be here.
Absolute bloody pleasure. First off, mate, can you tell me about the origins of Derision Cult and how the band came to be?
Yeah. So it's a long story and a very short story, I guess. I grew up in Iowa. I was in the Iowa metal scene, the late 90s, kind of the same world that kind of Slipknot came out of, around those guys in Des Moines. Moved to Chicago, took a big break from music, got big into triathlon, Ironmans and stuff. Spent a lot of time in the big ad agency space, which feels a lot of what we, originally kind of talked about in Mercenary Notes, just some of the crazy campaigns I was involved in, quite honestly, manipulating the public a little bit. So it's kind of a inside job, but 2014 had really started getting back into music and working on demos, but that really happened very organically. I was always a big industrial fan. And, I'll tell you a story. One thing that, moving to Chicago with, the birthplace of Ministry and, Wax Trax and, these artists. Well, I came to meet a lot of these people, just through going to shows and so forth. And one of the things that was really inspiring, and I'll give a call out to Jim Marcus from Diawarza, who does all the artwork for Mercenary Notes, does a lot, did our logo and everything. But I was really inspired by the work ethos of Chicago, the scene here. People do not, and not to shit on LA, but there is kind of this sense of you got to make it, and whatever make it is usually means you do this full time. And it's, look at me. The ethos in Chicago is very much everyone's kind of the people. And so I found out through this that in just meeting a lot of the artists here, people are also, I met Jim through the ad industry and, obviously I was a big Diawarza fan and, all the work he'd done. But what I realized is that success is defined more by kind of the, are you putting your footprint on the world or leaving your thumbprint on the creative kind of zeitgeist, if that makes sense. And that really inspired me to kind of let go of sort of materialistic milestones around art, music, making art for the sake of art. And once I did that, it was really easy to be creative. And I found myself plugging in with, just the artists we worked on for Mercenary Part 1, a lot of the guys, X 9 Inch Nails members, the guys from Ministry, Stabbing Westward, and they all kind of think like that. And just that ethos is really inspiring. So I got started through that. The name Derision Cult was inspired by a movie called The Room. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a movie in 2009 and it was popular because people hated it so much. I saw a review of it talking about this cult of derision. And I thought that's an interesting concept that, people come together through things they hate. And a lot of what the early tracks that I did and collaborated with Sean on were really about that theme. And some of the things I did in the ad industry where we literally provoked one audience to get them all angry because it'd make this audience buy more products. It's been long enough I could say I did that very thing with Nike. We knew that, hey, if we got a bunch of these rednecks pissed off and burning their Nike shoes, that caused the urban people to buy them more because they, and that's actually who buys nice shoes. They tend to be urban liberal people. And so I did a lot of that enragement equals engagement stuff and was involved in campaigns like that. And I just thought that was such an interesting thing that we live in a world like that where I can piss you off and get a reaction. It's a lot like pro wrestling, isn't it? Like, don't
Yes.
the heels are always the people go to watch and hate the heels. And, I guess I don't watch pro wrestling now, but I grew up on that stuff in the 80s with the $1 Million Man and Andre stuff, right?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, man. Vader and Undertaker and all that, man. Dude, don't worry. I did
Right. But it's so this guy Eric Bischoff gave a TED talk on that and how pro wrestling so mimics reality. The news is the same way. They don't want you to think, they want you to feel. And we actually sampled that line in a track, Bastards of the World. But that was it. But that was kind of my thought process. But I was a guitar player that's who I am at heart. For me, it was Dave Mustaine and Kirk Hammett and Slash and people like that before I ever got into industrial. And I wanted to make sure, especially when I partnered up with Glitch Mode, which is a very synthetic synthetic label. I really want to make sure I preserve that on the guitar, that, hey, this music's guitar driven. And I think we've done a pretty good job of preserving that, for industrial tracks like Radiation Blues. We have acoustic guitars on there, which I know you wouldn't typically hear. One of the things that's been kind of the biggest honor in my life is working with Reeves Gabrels.
Yes.
Who was a guitar hero of mine from the 90s. So all the way back, I was a fan with Tin Machine, like even before, all the stuff he did with Bowie in the late 90s.
And The Cure as well, eh?
Right. Yeah, and The Cure is a new album. So Reeves played with us on a couple tracks on Mercenary Part 2 and Part 1. And he, it's awesome. They always say never meet your heroes, but he's such a sweet, sweet man, him and Susan, his wife. So been really lucky in that regard.
Yeah, so you've mentioned collaborating with Reeves as well, but you've also collaborated with Justin, Chris, just to name a few, man. Tell me about some of these collaborations and what it was like working with these different collaborators.
Yeah, Chris Connolly. Well, I'll tell you how that came about. So Chris, and this again, we're all Chicagoans, right? So Chris sings in a band called the Joy Thieves, and the Joy Thieves had done some remixes for. I'd been involved in another project, and I've done some things with the Joy Thieves. Is kind of like this big collective of Chicago industrial. There's like 100 of us, and anyways, Chris is in it too, and we just knew we had that track that I envisioned like a Killing Joke, very much what Chris did with like Murder Inc. and some of those, those bands, plus, obviously the Ministry lineage. But that was as simple as just ask Dan Milligan, who's a mutual friend, hey, you think Chris would be into this? And he was. And it was as simple as that. What's funny about Chris is he works really fast. And a lot of people don't know this, but he's a crazy morning guy. So we sent him a demo of that track on like a Thursday, and he's like, I can't do a Scottish accent. I don't know if you can tell I'm from Iowa, so I talk like a, but and he writes all his emails in caps, and they even kind of look Scottish. And he says, "Great, love the track. I'll have the music to you in a couple days." Right on the dot. And I looked at, you could see when people send the emails, it was at like 5:30 in the morning. He must see that on a Saturday morning. But yeah, and I'm the opposite. I don't do mornings very well. I'm kind of a night owl, but yeah, Chris came about that way. Then we made that animated video where we turned Chris into this sort of snake oil salesman. And Reeves is in that too. Reeves, Reeves, I just, reached out to, and I knew him a little bit from being kind of a super fan of his solo stuff. But so that happened. Justin Broderick, is actually, he's a fan of Glitch Mode. So the label that I work with, there was some connections there, but it was a lot of fun working with, and I'm actually going through a bit of a Godflesh phase right now.
Yeah.
So, and and I actually hung out with him a little bit at Cold Waves here in Chicago last year. But Justin came about, and it's mutual. Sean Payne, my producer, he's a huge Godflesh fan. That's like the music of his soul. And, we just knew that what I really love about Justin's productions is how dissonant and unsettling and gritty, especially like, Street Cleaner, who doesn't adore that. But we really wanted to preserve that in our mixes because it's real easy for things with DAWs nowadays to get super polished. And I always feel like the best industrial music is really grimy and little off. And nobody does that better than Justin, even Purge, the new stuff, like, so I always wanted to do so. He's done a couple mixes for us now. There's one of Warning Signs that'll be coming out here in a couple weeks. That is oh my God, it's like World War III.
That's a killer mix. I actually did have a listen to that, dude. That's an
awesome... did you hear it?
Yeah, dude.
I just got artwork back for it too, actually. So Jim Marcus did the art. I don't know if this is gonna show up, but well, there you could sort of that's not showing up at all, is it?
There you go. Yeah, no, we got it, just
yeah. We'll be making noise about that in a couple weeks. And
oh yeah,
I love Justin. He's a sweet guy. You wouldn't you listen to Godflesh or Jesu, or it sounds like this is a man who's going to rip your throat out. But no,
the whole metal community is like that, though, isn't it? It's like we all like big, smelly, tattooed men, women, and that
right.
kind of have this alternative look that people think, man, they're so scary. But the metal community is the biggest bunch of softies. And as you kind of mentioned in Chicago there, you all kind of know each other. It's kind of a tight scene. And it's the same here in Australia. And I think it's a dichotomy of each scene as well. Like you kind of all go to the same shows. You all meet up. I go down to Adelaide. I go to a gig. I bump into a bunch of bands. I know there, a bunch of people. And they all kind of become your friends as well, slowly through going to all these gigs and hanging out with them. And when you're down, they're usually the first ones to pick you up. I've been going through a rough trot myself, and I was at a gig at seeing Niall the other week, and I had one of these guys, man, we're your family, all of us. See, we're your bloody family. It's very uplifting. We're a very gentle crew.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, one thing about that not to bring it down, but there's an uplifting side to this story, but Sean Payne, my producer, there's I don't know if it made the news and probably didn't make its way to Australia, but he was involved in a really bad car accident last year. And unfortunately, his wife was killed in that. And Stasia she was a big part of kind of cheerleading the label and stuff. But that community came together and raised tens of thousands of dollars for Sean, which has been super helpful in him getting back on his feet. And, some of those, when you talk about being family, I think some of that is, there's been times where that gets pretty real,
Oh, yeah. And, my heart goes out to him. That would have been so tough for him to get through. I totally get it. I lost my niece to a brain tumor a few years ago, about 4 years ago, 2 days after her 5th birthday, rest in peace. But the metal community got behind, had a fundraiser for her. Then I got diagnosed with stage 4 bowel cancer last year. I'm not even meant to be sitting here right now today, but I ended up having, up in Sydney, they put on a metal concert for me, raised a few $1,000s towards my cancer treatment. I think that the whole community got behind and raised $8,000 for me to be able to go down to Adelaide and still have my home here and then go back and forth and to be able to get the treatment that I needed and to be able to live down Adelaide while I was going through that. So I totally get what you mean by the metal community being by each other and pushing through tough times, eh?
Yeah. How you doing now? You're good
I'm
though?
in remission now, man. Thank fuck. It's still
Oh,
being
good for
able to
you.
chat to bands like you, man, which is an absolute bloody pleasure. You did mention your advertising industry. How did that influence kind of the themes in the Mercenary Notes Part 1?
Sorry, what was that?
Just tell me a little bit about how, as you were mentioning before, your background in advertising. How did that influence some of the themes in the Mercenary Notes Part 1?
Yeah. Well, I really this it was just a subject that's near and dear to my heart is just and what really inspired me to, it's just a source of inspiration. I'm one of these guys that have been married, have kids. I don't have a lot of I'm not the type of guy to sing songs about heartbreak and all that. It's just that's not me. But what is me, and I feel really strongly about, is you know, just how much stimulation people have. The average person, and these are like not to nerd out on data, but this is the stuff I do. I'm not doing music. When I started out, when we started out writing the Mercenary tracks, one of the things I talked about in interviews a lot at the time is, the average amount of data a person is exposed to by the time they're 18 is like 120 times what it was in 1980. And the digital messages that we see, and just how much imaging we're exposed to through the internet, through having these and all that kind of stuff. It what ends up happening is it's just really easy to manipulate people, and I've done that on a few occasions. Like, I've created campaigns that we know are going to piss these people off. We really don't care what they think. We care about, and I thought that was such an interesting thing. And to some extent, not to sound altruistic, but I care about that stuff and the ability to kind of associate between what messages are just here to kind of provoke a reaction out of me versus what's real. Because my kids are going to grow up in this kind of world. And I think that's important to understand. I'll give you one example that really was a campaign that really set me on a path for a song, Bastards of the World. I was at, and I know in Australia, you have a lot stricter gun laws than we do here in
Oh, yeah.
the US. I was approached by a gun manufacturer to help them market an AR-15 for kids. And the point of the gun was, now the reality it was what I learned in, the discovery with this brand was, actually the reason AR-15s, you hear about them used in shootings, they're actually the most popular gun to use. And the reason is because they're so easy to hold. And that's why hunters use, that's why everyone now, it also happens that the reason they wanted to market it to kids is because they patented a trigger that can't go off. It can't just accidentally go off. And the point of the gun was, so like when grandpa takes the grandkid to learn how to shoot a target, the most common thing that happens with kids is the trigger goes off and they don't mean for it to, and they accidentally shoot somebody. Like, that's a common accident. This gun company, even though they made the gun that way, did not give a shit about any of that. What they cared about was, let's get those gun rights people and the left as mad as they can at these assholes selling an AR-15. Who they, and the reason they did that wasn't even to sell the gun, it was to sell bullets, because they knew every time these things got in the news cycle, bullet sales went up. Because there'd be fear of, I didn't take that project, but I thought that was such a good microcosm of things that I've been involved in some other stuff with pharma and big brands that way. So that, just kind of watching that go on and how much money is involved, and people aren't aware of this. Like, look, there is a level of 3D chess that, people or that companies will play to, create these sorts of things. And there is a term that we used in the business, enragement equals engagement. And if I can get you, and this is exactly what, when you're talking about pro wrestling, it's the same ethos. If it doesn't really matter if you love me or hate me, as long as you feel one way or another, I can probably make some money off you. And we live in a world that the people creating media, the advertisers and stuff, the campaign directors, the people that, did what I did, they're so tuned into doing that. So I think it's really important people are aware of, look, that's a reality about the messages you see. And I think it's only getting worse or it's only becoming more of an issue because, of how much, screen time we have and stuff. So, that was with Mercenary Notes. We called it that because it was meant to be, look, here's sort of the blueprints of what it's like to be a guy that makes this stuff, and that was sort of the theme of the track. So a lot of the tracks deal with those kind of issues. I also did a lot with AI, building some of the things that went on, with Microsoft, that have gone on to become things that with Chat GPT and stuff like that we all know about now. Like we wrote a track called The Year Hope Failed that really kind of addresses that. I actually sampled a Microsoft engineer from a meeting I was at where he was kind of pounding on the table about some of the things that we needed to be thinking about in terms of, AI and automation and, making decisions that maybe shouldn't be made and all that. So he had some cool soundbite quotable things that I was like, I got to put this on a record someday. So
most definitely. It's a messed up world. Some of the things that the kids most are dangerous over here is probably tripping over their toes. We got boomerangs, not AR-15s. Can you share some insights into the creative process and songwriting process of Mercenary Notes Part 2?
Yeah. So, well, the way it started was, we start with about 10 tracks, and and when Sean and I began to collaborate, I had demos for things. And the reason it was important for me to work with Sean is that I wanted to make sure that these didn't come off like just a guitar player who got a hold of a drum machine one day, I really wanted, this needs to feel and sound like in Chicago industrial. And in my orbit, nobody has better lineage into that than Sean Payne. Cyanotic is a legendary Chicago industrial band. Sean worked with Jamie Duffy and Acumen Nation. And, those are that was the school he came through and those big beats. And so that was what, that's kind of how our paths crossed. And, now we're good friends and we do a lot of things together. But I had about 10 demos. Very quickly, we realized that this is going to be way more palpable and make more sense, not as like an album, but as EPs. So then we made a decision to split them up. And that was more based on just kind of how things flow. There wasn't any like, these are the shitty songs and those are the really good ones, like nothing like that. But the process was we started with those demos. Sean was he kind of took them and sort of winnowed them down, if that makes sense. Like, hey, these parts don't work. We did rewrites here and there, but the demos kind of what you hear now is pretty much intact. And then so from those 10, we wrote a couple more together. There's a track called Where Are You Now that Sean sings on that's on part 2. Actually Radiation Blues is one that we did Slaves Rebuild on part 1. We felt like we needed a track like that on part 2, so we did Radiation, and we got Reeves back to play on that one again, and so that's really cool. But the process is mainly what has been on these tracks. I kind of do the demos here, and then I go over to glitch mode and we just work on them myself. Sean, Brad Houston, kind of engineer, guitar player. Jesse's, around, he'll add parts. What we're kind of morphing into now is being a little more collaborative. Sean and I are working on tracks for down the road, and that's we just sit in a room and bang on pots and pans till we come up with something, which is a lot of fun because, I've spent so many years, even back in the 90s, it's just me in a room. Back then it was with a 4-track, now it's with a DAW, but I really enjoy that collaborative process. So I think we'll do a lot more just kind of putting little pieces together and me working kind of more over there and less kind of on my own. But to answer, I guess, to go back to your original point, the process was basically I'd start things here and then work with Sean. I always start, like I said, I'm a guitar player. I always start with riffs and, build things around it. What's interesting is Sean's the opposite. he is, because he kind of came into music through soundtracks and stuff like that. So he will always think about the background elements and the beats and then kind of build the foreground. And, it's interesting because I think that's how a lot of really good industrial is made. Like I'm learning this just the more and more I kind of interact with some of the legends and big influences, that seems to be kind of how that the music that really influences me is approach. It's not like the Metallica school where you come up with riffs and then the song happens. So I'm really I'm grateful that Sean approaches it that way. So it's not just like two riff guys trying to make music. It's like, all right, you kind of have a percussionist and but yeah, that's how it works. And yeah, so far so good, man.
Yeah, have you got a favorite track off the album this week? And I know it changes from week to week with albums and
Yeah.
EPs, but which one are you digging at the moment and why?
Well, there's a track called Abdication Day, which that to me was like my Judas Priest song, just because it's got two guitars in it. But I'll tell you, the track came about because years ago I have a stepson, and we were flying back from Ireland, and it's about a 7-hour flight from and I was over there for a wedding for a buddy of mine, and we just got into this big talk just about life and kind of like here's all he was 15 at the time, so it's kind of one of those we were having one of those discussions like, yeah, here's the ways that you kind of think, well, here's how shit really is once you become a man. No one's gonna wipe your ass for you. You know all these, I had a lot of Newcastles in me at that point, so I was kind of just laying on some like, hey, here's how it really is once you kind of get out in the world. There's a line in there, insurrections beset you from the first cigarette of the day. I remember actually saying that to him. And but anyways, that just led to, but that track has a special place because it's actually a pretty old track. That I think my first demo I did of that's about 10 years old.
Yeah, nice.
Maybe 8, but it was one of the ones I originally took to Sean. And yeah, he turned it into a big percussion monster. So yeah, it's what it is now. Someday I like that one a lot. I really like playing it's on part 1, but Your Hope Failed is probably my favorite to do live just because especially with Jesse plays drums up front because he uses an electric kit, so I'll be playing guitar and just this, that right next to me. It gets me going. But yeah, I like Influence a lot. I really like but yeah, I'd say Abdication Day is the one I'm jamming on. But you're totally right. It just depends how you're feeling that given week.
That's it. Best place that people can head along and support you guys.
Well, derisioncult.com. We just got a new website, and by the time this airs, it'll hopefully be I'll be making some noise about it. But Jim Marcus,
that is live. I jumped over and had a look just before.
Yeah. So Jim designed that. Very excited to finally, forever I just have the link tree thing, and man, we should have a proper site. Everyone keeps asking for a website, and where can we go to? So we finally did it for real. But yeah, that you can see all our socials. You can see the latest news when we're dropping all our tracks there.
And Bandcamp as well. You can go over and buy the albums as well. I love Bandcamp. I know people stream a lot on Spotify, but that's only, as you mentioned, advertising. It's only making the big corporation rich off the backs of the musicians. So
one of the things that's really cool about Bandcamp that I didn't even think about this until actually Jim brought it up. For an artist, you can change the artwork after the fact. So if you want to change something to a special edition, or you want to have something be for charity and donate. So, and it's funny because like that is sort of true. That's the only place, because like if you put a track out on Spotify, like you kind of sign in blood to the distributor. That's what it's going to be forever. But you can add tracks, you can add video, you can do all that. So as a creative tool, I really like Bandcamp, And once Jim brought that up, my wheels started turning. I'm like, well, what are some cool things we could do with that? But yeah, I really love that. that aspect of it, is that, you know, you can edit things down the road if you want to change stuff and all
And
that.
you can't fuck with the sound quality as well. You can download the FLAC, the best quality sound or whatever over on Bandcamp on Spotify. Is stuck with
Yep.
a shitty half-ass sound as well. So go buy the music, support the band as well. Jump over to derisioncult.com, support them. Any last words, shout outs, thank yous, or anything else you'd like to add in there, my friend? Did we catch that?
Yeah, just well, like you said, derisioncult.com. You know, shout out, thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's checked it out so far. We hope we'll have some show announcements here in the new year, and man, maybe someday we'll make it down to Australia.
Hell yeah, dude. That would be awesome. I know quite a few industrial metal bands that are kicking ass right now. Go check out Witch Grinder, Dark Cell, man. There are a couple of good ones. In Extremis are really good as well, dude, from down under. So, Dave, man, this has been an absolute pleasure, mate. Talk soon, eh?
All right, man. We'll see you.
Cheers, mate.
Oi, you're tuned in to Jai That Aussie Metal Guy, so make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of his sick content. And remember, stay brutal, you legend.